Thank you, Kieran, for that wonderful introduction. And look, I'm really delighted to be here at such an exciting time, really, in OpenJaw's evolution. And looking forward to meeting as many of you as I can over the next 2 days of the conference. So today, I'm going to talk a bit about big data. And this is an interesting quote from Geoffrey Moore, the famous high-tech marketing guru and author. So without big data, you are blind and deaf in the middle of a freeway. I know it is somewhat dramatic, but I do believe this to be true for every single retail business on the planet today. But what is big data? Well, this is how I feel when I hear those two words together. I'm the guy here with the orange tie. This term, seriously, has been overused, misrepresented, and I think really misunderstood for far too long. So to understand what it really means, let me bring you on a short journey, starting with our big data past. So how many people here have heard of the Semi-Autonomous Ground Environment System, or SAGE? Hands up. Oh, wow, 2 people? 3? With such a catchy name, so few? Seriously, I'm not surprised. But in my world, the world of big data, SAGE actually is quite an important system. SAGE was essentially a radar system built by IBM and MIT back in the 1950s, but importantly, was also the first system that we can say satisfies Gartner's 3 V's of big data. So that is volume, velocity, and variety. So a big data system is really only a big data system if it can process huge volumes of data relative to other systems, such as applications, that exist at the same time. The data in the system must have a lot of variety. It can't just be one thing, illicit transactions, it must have variety. And the data must move through the system with velocity, at speed, close to real time. And there's an interesting connection here as well to the global travel industry. The work that IBM did on SAGE, the world's first big data system, led directly to the development of the Semi-Autonomous Business Research Environment, otherwise known as SABRE. So, from the past to the future, where will we be in 2050? Well, it will look something like this in terms of global data volumes, at least. By 2050, we will have 45 zettabytes of data globally stored across 100 billion connected devices. So I really think this is amazing. No longer do we talk about terabytes, about petabytes, or about exabytes even. We talk about zettabytes. So the Internet of Things is really driving spectacular growth in global data volumes. Already today, we have 4.4 zettabytes of data globally. But how big is big? How big is a zettabyte? How big is 45 zettabytes, which is where we'll be in 2050? Here is a big number, 11,250,000,000,000 DVDs. Okay, so if we were to take the 45 zettabytes of data we will have in 2050, we would need 11,250,000,000,000 DVDs to store this data. That is a lot of DVDs. So many DVDs, in fact, if I were to take each DVD out of its box and stack it from here to the moon, I could do it 35 times. And remember, each DVD is only 1.2 millimeters thick. That's a lot of data. So why now? What's so important about now? What's so special about now? Why is everybody in the tech industry talking about big data, the cloud, and AI, and all of those technologies? Well, what we see today is what I like to call the convergence. So with the internet, we now have billions of connections. And every single connection generates a huge amount of data. So we have photos posted to Facebook, we have messages on WeChat, we have sensor data in smart homes. The list goes on and on. The cloud enables us to store and process this data in a very low-cost, scalable, and elastic way. And cognitive computing enables us to leverage machine learning technologies to model this data, to either automate some cognitive process or even surpass it in some cases. I really believe that this will usher in a new industrial revolution. And when you think about it, what steam power did to physical labor, these technologies, the 3 Cs, will do to cognitive labor. So let me illustrate that point with an example. So Baidu's announcement in late 2016 really surprised everybody in the tech industry. People had forgotten the pace at which technology can develop in this exponential way that Kieran talked about earlier. So Baidu's Deep Speech 2 algorithm can now transcribe spoken Mandarin to written Mandarin better than humans can. No human can beat it anymore. So I really think this is actually quite a critical milestone in our evolution as human beings. We can't beat the machines anymore. We just can't do it. And I think this is a pattern we will see repeat itself in many areas, including travel retailing. So OpenJaw is participating in this revolution. We are building T-Data, which will power what we call the digital optimization and transformation of your business. But how will we do this? What's our secret sauce? What's the magic in T-Data? The magic is a thing called propensity, or propensity modeling. So using machine learning algorithms, we will generate propensity scores for every single traveler on the T-Retail platform. These scores measure the likelihood a traveler will purchase a basket of travel products. But let's just talk about that word a bit. What does propensity actually mean? So let's think a bit about today. So after this keynote, I'll have a nice lunch, and I will drink a glass of wine with that nice lunch, just to help me unwind after my keynote. I always do that. Tomorrow, you will travel to the airport, and if you have kids, I bet you will buy some gifts for your kids in the airport. You always do that. You have a natural propensity to do these things. So essentially, propensity models exploit natural patterns in human behavior, essentially for economic advantage. So propensity is not a new idea, but really only with the convergence of connections, the cloud, and machine learning has it recently become successful in business. My background is financial services, where propensity is used with great success. So much so that 20% of sales in many retail banks today can be directly attributed to propensity models. And this is a trend we've seen over the last sort of 3 years or so in banking, in retail banking in particular. So how do we solve it? How does propensity modeling actually work? Well, it starts with the data, obviously, and we need lots of data. We need demographic data to tell us who the customers are that we're targeting. We need psychographic data to tell us why the customer buys things, and this is usually based on lifestyle preferences, for example. And there's proxies for this on the internet, things like Facebook likes, activity on Pinterest, and so on. We need transactional data, and this is really important because it tells us what the customer has bought in the past. And it's also very useful to know something about your customers and your prospects' personality. So this tells us something about why they buy things based on particular character traits. You know, they're extroverts, they're neurotic, they're outgoing, and so on. And this is very useful for tailoring a marketing message. So all of this data is pushed through a propensity model, which uses machine learning. So this is the data in more detail. And as it happens, the most important data here is yours, and it sits on the T-Retail platform. So this is the hard transactional data, the P&Rs, the inventory, the fares, the ancillaries, the loyalty information, and so on, that essentially validates everything else. including online behavior. And this data must be big data, spanning an industry or a large part of an industry, not just a single organization. You cannot do this well on your own in a single organization. You just don't have enough data. But together, when you think about it, we do have quite a unique advantage. So, how will this work in practice? Well, let's take an example. Let's take a hypothetical traveler. Let's call him John. So T-Data will generate a continuous stream of propensity scores for all travelers on T-Retail. Now, we know that John likes to take long weekends to Europe every year. He has done so for the last 5 years, and we can see that in the transactional data. Our partners at Facebook know that he responds to inspirational advertising on his Facebook feed. So what does propensity do? Well, propensity starts to fill some gaps. So propensity tells us that there is an 80% probability that John will buy a 4-star hotel near a beach for his long weekend at this point in time. It will tell us that there's a high probability he will rent a mid-size car on his trip. And it will tell us that there's a very low probability this time he will buy travel insurance. And there's lots of complex sort of mechanics behind the calculation of these probabilities, and they're not based on one particular set of data, they're based on that combination of data points. For example, and this is an extreme example, but it's an interesting one, he may rent a mid-sized car despite the fact he has no kids because he's a big ego or he has an interest in cars or something like that. So how do we monetize this sort of data? How do we, make it profitable for us? Well, here's an example in the area of online advertising optimization with Facebook dynamic ads. So we ship all of our data to Facebook, our partners, our digital advertising partners, and deliver this highly personalized digital advertising to John on the right platform at the right time. And with this approach, you can see that we are moving towards a segment of one in digital marketing. It's starting to become really very sophisticated in how we tailor and target a marketing message. And with this, we can optimize our media spend and also significantly improve conversion rates. And Brian Porter tomorrow in his talk will talk a little bit more about this in the context of the funnel and the sort of impact it can have. So, in closing then, as a data scientist, what do I think the future of travel looks like? And I am somewhat biased as a data scientist, but I really truly believe that the future of travel is the future of data. We cannot really separate the two anymore. We have this convergence of connections, the cloud, and cognitive technologies, which is transformative, genuinely transformative. And I have no doubt that this amazing progress will extend into the travel retailing sector. And the work we've started with T-Data is a great example, I think, of how this will happen in the travel retailing sector. So with T-Data, the future of travel will be super personalized, it will be cognitively assisted and optimized for the traveler and optimized for you as travel retailers. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and introduce Kieran back to the stage.